your goodness in me nourish my soul. All the more till your love overflows into my home. For I'm married in the fountain. Hello and welcome to Marriage in the Fountain. And we're coming towards the end of our sessions together. And in this session, we have a very interesting topic, a very challenging topic, blended families. In other words, your kids, my kids, that kind of picture. Now, both of us sitting here from two different families have something of that story. My dad passed away when I was young. My mom remarried when I was 7 years old. In this sense, it's maybe a bit easier than your story, where you had kids from a previous marriage at an older age and then had to mold a new family. Henry, what was some of the challenges that you faced with in that?
Yeah, the real challenge, as you said, your kid, my kid. So now what we had to come to a realization was you've got two totally different cultures.
Yeah.
Totally different ways of doing things. Totally different rules.
Yes.
Everything was different, merging into one. So I couldn't walk in and expect the house to run like the house ran before. And Landie couldn't expect me to walk in and just fit in to what they were doing. And now you can imagine the kids were like, okay, what's going on here? Because I did come from a lot more strict, more structured.
You called the shots.
I am a very structured person. I'm a very strict person. These are right and these are wrong in my house. Whereas Landie's household was a bit more free for all to a degree. Okay, not totally. That wasn't total chaos.
But in your eyes, maybe.
But so there was a big thing there. The first thing that we needed to do was get on the same page.
Yeah.
Because again, where there's unity, God blesses it, commands a blessing.
Yeah.
We needed to get on the same page. And we needed to come to a realization that this isn't your kids and my kids. By choosing you as my wife, I knew what I was in for. I knew you had kids. And I didn't just choose you, I chose everything that you came with.
Yes.
All right. We spoke before about the end picture, God's picture. So I knew where Landie was going because God showed me. But I needed to know where we were going. And it needed to be a union.
Pointing to the fountain again, what happens, I think, very often if a mom or a dad is alone with kids for quite some time, then that spouse section becomes more the kids fulfill much of that role. Because I am lonely and we're going through a tough time and real hurt together. It binds me and the kids together. Now suddenly if a wife walks in on that, it is like I have to say, wait, I need to make space for a spouse now. And what I've seen in counseling before is, sure you guys have as well and maybe experienced this as well, the kids don't take well at it at the beginning. No. They really feel a bit of rejection because I was always there with mom making decision or taking up responsibilities and fulfilling some needs. Now suddenly somebody else is wanting to take my place. How did you deal with that, Landie?
Well, from my perspective is, my kids were a lot older. I had a teenage daughter that became my friend. Well, she became my friend and I became her friend.
Yeah.
So what happened there was a bit of resistance because, and it eventually turned into hatred towards him. So at that stage, you need to almost draw the line. So if I can give any advice to parents, specifically women, because women tend to do that a lot easier than what men do.
Okay.
A woman needs a man. They need somebody to talk to. They need somebody to lean on. And that's what happens when you've got a daughter that becomes a best friend.
Yeah.
What that does is it blurs the lines of parent and child.
Yeah.
So, I think with a man, I think it may be a bit different than what it would be a woman with a daughter. But I just want to touch on when Henry and I got together is it gave me safety to know that Henry chose my kids too.
Yes.
And because he chose my kids too, it was never my stepdaughter or my stepson. It was my daughter and my son. You will never hear Henry talk about the steps.
Yeah.
That gave me freedom to release and to stand that when there was conflict coming in. So when she resisted, and it got quite ugly at some point, when she resisted, I knew that he could step in and discipline,
Yeah.
or he could step in and love, because I knew that he would love from a place of a fatherly heart, because he's accepted them as his own kids, which released me from having to protect and to cover them because I don't trust him. Now, when a man walks into a marriage with a woman and he doesn't accept the kids as his own, the woman is always on the defense.
Yeah.
Especially when that friendship comes in, it's, I need to defend this now because how long is he going to stay for? And I need to keep her on the back burner here.
Yeah.
That's what's happening psychologically. But if he steps in and he says, these are my children, not my stepchildren, these are my children, and I'm taking responsibility for us
You
as a family.
allow him to do that.
And I allow him to do that. That's a big one. And I release that. So regardless of how he reacts, and it was very bumpy in the beginning because he was a lot more stricter than what I was, and the kids were hurting because of divorces and all the rest of the case. I needed to release that responsibility and fully trust that he loves them
Yeah.
and that his heart is good. And sometimes he would make mistakes. He did. He's human. But I would need to step back and say, okay, I trust you.
Yeah.
And when he would make the mistake, it would be in the bedroom and say, I didn't quite agree with that. Can we talk about that?
Yes.
It was never,
Quietly
ever
speak.
a disagreement in front of the kids. It used to be, that was a bit harsh. I don't like that. Okay, well then how would you like to deal with it? And we would come back together and say, okay, let's trial it this way.
Praise
It
God
was
for that.
always here.
Yeah. Can I bring up something else? Because out of my situation, I've got two brothers, they're older as well. There wasn't another dad because dad passed away. So it's much easier for a new dad to come into the picture and to become dad. And also we were older, 7, 9, 11. For you, the picture was different. There was still another parent out there. Now a new marriage. How does that work? Because you're now not the only dad on the scene. What are some of the challenges that came out from that?
I'll do my bit and then I'll hand over to Henry. From his perspective, because I think he'd be able to speak a bit deeper in there. From mine is, my stance is never ever shut your kids off from their biological father. Okay, that was just my stance. If they needed to see their dad, that was fine. And the next thing is I never forced my kids to call Henry dad.
Okay.
And I'll leave it then and I'll hand it from you because I think you'd be able to speak from the dad's issue.
Yeah, I think that the one thing Landie did really well is she didn't allow the kids to talk bad about their father as well.
Okay.
Because her stance was quite simple, is if I allow you to talk bad about him, then you will think it's all right to talk bad about Henry.
Yeah.
So there was a standard of, this is the cards that were
Children
dealt.
honor
Live with
your
it.
parents.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely that. And she was very strict in that. Whenever the kids wanted to complain, say, well, no, that's not how we talk about people.
Yes.
That's not how you talk about that is your father or that is your father's new wife.
Yeah.
Whatever the case is. So that set a foundation that they couldn't run to her saying Henry's so bad or Henry's this or Henry's that, because if she allowed that, she'd be in a glass house.
Yeah.
Whereas this was clear. The other thing in terms of the calling dad, that is a choice. Yes, at times it would be nice because I'm acting as dad, I'm acting as father.
Yeah.
But the title doesn't define me. Yet again, we go back to the husbands and the wives. I act it not so that you can call it, so that God can see it in me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is it. It's pure love for them because I had a responsibility. Same as Landie, she's got a responsibility towards my kids.
Yeah.
And she treats them with the respect that I treat her kids with. So now it's our kids. And there's no greater, yes, there's still disagreements. And yes, the personalities are still different and it's different homes. But there's still that love that just goes through and is in unity, in agreement,
Yeah.
a firm foundation.
Where you guys are now is actually also really important in terms of a picture when you at the beginning of this, when the kids are still in their home, to create that sense for them of laying, listen, like Rob uses the triangle as well and says the kids hock on.
Yeah.
And one day
Yeah.
they'll unhook and they'll leave, but this still must stay. Just to keep that perspective, to say, listen, the kids are now here, but kids, you need to understand, I married a husband whom I will spend my life with, and you will leave the home one day. So the relationship needs to be primary, like we had the conversation. This is first, and that creates an atmosphere for the kids to have safety.
Just want to add in on that, guys, from a woman's perspective. When the new husband accepts the kids
Yeah,
as his own, the wife feels loved, incredibly loved. Because if he's not accepting your kids as his own,
yeah,
that's a piece of you that you're not loving. So how can I believe you when you say you love me, but you can't accept my children? So if you want to talk about love languages and bringing unity here, is when the new husband, loves the kids and calls them his own, this becomes very strong.
yeah.
And that makes all the difference.
It's actually really so good. It was recently I read something from a psychologist that just stated it that way. It says just the difference that typically a mom and a dad will experience their kids. He says that dads will, let's say, kid does bad at school. It's just, oh, you did bad at school. But if mom reads the report, it's, oh, we did bad at school. It's much closer for a mom typically than for a husband. So yeah, how you treat the kids is very different. Maybe to close off, it was actually as years later, I think I was in my 26, maybe close to 30s, I once just, it struck my heart that I never thanked my dad for choosing my mom with 3 boys, for loving her enough to say, I'll take you with 3 boys. And I actually wrote him a letter. I said, just thank you so much, Dad. That must have been a real great love. And I think while it may face challenges, we have to recognize that a blended family is really an incredible demonstration that people would love each other so much that they're willing to take it with very obvious challenges. So we pray over you all. If you have a blended family, may God bless you with great wisdom to see the challenges and to hear His voice along the way, to grow through all of that with greater love and respect.